is Gorka here? Let's start with Sebastian, because the other thing that happened is that Steve Bannon lost his job yesterday. He was kicked out of Breitbart. His last power, the last pillar of his power, pulled away. He's lost Trump's friendship. He's lost the Mercer's money. He has now been fired from Breitbart. Very important, a very startling fall from grace for a guy who just a few months ago was at the president's side. Dr. Sebastian Gorka is a Hungarian-American military and intelligence analyst, Fox News strategist, and former deputy assistant to President Trump. He's also the author of the New York Times bestseller, Defeating Jihad. He is in Malmo, Sweden, where he's looking into these no-go zones, and we're going to talk to him about that as well. There he is. How you doing?
Hey, great to see you, Drew. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How's Sweden?
Really fascinating. The cognitive dissonance is just, it's palpable. Half of the people we talk to say there's no problem. If there's increased violence, it's just young guys without jobs. The fact that hand grenades are being, detonated. The day we arrived, a 23-year-old man was shot in the head in Rinkeby. And the other half say, no, this nation is in crisis. The immigration policies are threatening the future of Stockholm. So it is a classic case of the political elite not wanting to grasp the reality.
I want to talk to you about this at length because this is a really important subject, but we have to cover the news first. I mean, the downfall of Steve Bannon has been pretty shocking, and it really does look as if Donald Trump kind of sent out the word that you were on his side or on Bannon's side. Are you as surprised as everybody else? I mean, did you see this coming?
I'll tell you something, and I haven't told this to anybody else in the media. When I went to Steve's office one day in the Eisenhower building, so we had to move out of the West Wing when they refurbished the West Wing this summer.
Right.
And when I went to Steve's office to talk to him, and Glenn Thrush comes out of his office.
The New York Times reporter, yeah.
I just went, hang on, who's it going to be next? Maggie Haberman coming out of Steve's office? I have said it, and I'll say it again on the record. Along with Newt Gingrich, Steve is probably one of the most strategic political minds alive today in America. But he made some big mistakes, and his interaction with people like Michael Wolff. I was asked by an outside individual who mutually knew us to talk to Mike Wolff for his book. The second I met him, Drew, I knew this guy is an oily creep who wants to destroy the administration. I shook his hand, said hi, and I refused to talk to that man ever again. Steve thought he could talk to this guy and get away with it on or off the record, talk to Glenn Thrush and others. And his decisions got the better of him, and he's paid the price.
Do you look at what's happening right now? Yesterday was kind of a shocking day if you just take the news on the surface. Trump is negotiating to maybe extend the stay of the DACA, the Dreamers. He's talking about going to Davos now, which was the horrible globalist, cabal, as Bannon saw it. Do you think that the Trump agenda is gone? I mean, is he abandoning the agenda that got him where he is?
Not at all. Not at all. You've said this many times on your podcast that he's surprised you, right?
Right.
This wasn't the guy you wanted. You didn't have positive expectations.
Yep.
And he surprised you, and he's learned on the job. And one of the most important things you need to know about this man is he's broken every mold in political category. The taxonomy of politics changed on November the 8th in America in ways that the elite to this very day has very scant understanding of. And the idea that he goes to Davos does not make him a globalist. Look at what he did with NATO. He played NATO like a cheap fiddle. He said, we don't need you, you're obsolete. And then NATO gets all crazy. And then what does he do? Well, look, guys, if you want to be taken seriously, you need to, after 30 years, finally pay that 2%. What happens? The Secretary General of NATO comes to the East Wing of the White House, gives a press conference and says, 2%? Sure, no problem. Do not judge him based upon what you expect other politicians to do if they go to Davos. And I'm not giving up on DACA because this man knows why he won the election. And he knows that when he said build the wall as the first pillar of his substantive policy platform, he knows he can't go soft. There's only one way he loses the base. There's only one way, and that's if he's not true to himself. And I don't expect him to betray himself.
Okay, okay. I have one more question I have to ask you about Bannon, because I've never seen anybody miscalculate so terribly where his power. I mean, I was comparing him in an interview the other day with the Wile E. Coyote, who runs off a cliff and stands in air because he doesn't know he's standing in midair. Did Bannon think that he was the secret sauce of Trumpism? Is that the mistake he made? Did he think that Trump was just a kind of the front piece of the movement, but Bannon was the real intellect behind it? Is that how he went so wrong?
If you read the accurate biographies, there's a lot of garbage out there. You know, this is the Darth Vader of the right. If you read the real stories about where he grew up in Richmond, what his father did, what happened to his father's retirement account in 2008 when the economic crash happened. No, this isn't a man who pretended, I'm the president, I'm just going to hang my stuff on Donald Trump. This is a man who had a vision, and he saw in Donald Trump the requisite individual who was enough of a rank outsider who could potentially make this economic nationalism a reality. What you need to know about Steve Bannon is he has personally, years ago, declared war on the rhino establishment. And Donald Trump was, you know, the confluence, the constellation came together, that he declared war on the rhino establishment, and along came a man who, as far as I'm concerned, was only accidentally the GOP candidate. Donald Trump had nothing to do with the GOP. He was just accidentally the GOP candidate. You know, Bernie Sanders has more in common with Donald Trump than the GOP does as rank outsiders. And this was, you know, perfect for Steve.
Wow. Wow. Okay, let us talk. You know, I'm reading this book called The Strange Death of Europe, and one of the points that he talks about is how—
That's Douglas Murray, right?
Yes, Douglas Murray. And one of the things he talks about is the amazing difference between the opinions of the people, which were up to 70% opposed to the mass immigration that was taking place, and the basic gormless helplessness of the elites and the people in power who simply did not listen. Is that what you're seeing? You're in Malmo, Sweden. You've been looking around at what are called no-go zones. Is that happening there? I mean, are the people and the governing class on the same page or not?
I'll give you a couple of quotes from Swedes we met. One woman who deals as a think tanker on national security issues said, we have a crisis when it comes to immigration and the future of this nation. But if you say that publicly, you can hand in your resignation letter the same day you make that statement as a professional. Okay. I spoke to a Jewish Swedish lady today who said, there is an oppressive cone of silence. You cannot talk about. She says, all the Swedes know we are in crisis because we're having gang rapes occur. We've had, 20 immigrants, 20 immigrants rape one woman. 5 of them are arrested and are eventually acquitted by the Swedish courts. We have 80%, Drew, 80% of the Swedish police force want to retire early because it's too dangerous to go into the no-go zones. The chairman of the ambulance workers union is demanding that their ambulance workers and paramedics get issued body armor. This is Sweden. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's not Beirut. Okay. But politically, it's the most sensitive issue you can talk about.
But so your career is destroyed if you bring this up. But if you bring it up and then you run for office, will the people turn up? Will they vote for you, or basically?
Well, this is the fascinating thing, that this year is election year in Sweden. And there's a party, it's the Swedish Democrats, who originally, and this is where it's going to get really dicey. The Swedish Democrat Party started as a party affiliated with the Nazis, so they were a kind of neo-Nazi party historically, and they've excised that, they've distanced themselves from those policy pronouncements. But they're the only party that is prepared to talk about these things. And we met with the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Swedish Parliament, who's from that party, and they have doubled the size of their constituency in Parliament in just 3 years, because they're the only party that's going to talk about it. And Drew, they may be the next government.
That's amazing. Is the problem here, is the disparity a philosophical one? Is it the people who are elites believe that this is a good thing, bringing all these people in who don't share Swedish values, don't share the basics of the Swedish worldview, that they believe this is actually a positive thing, and the people, they just feel that people are too stupid to see it? Or is it actual helplessness? They do not know what to do.
Okay, so Sweden's very interesting. So let me tell you from the horse's mouth. We met with the former head of the Jewish National Association of Jewish Swedes. And she said, Sweden for 60 years has been about consensus. We define ourselves around consensus, and you must not rock the boat when it comes to consensus. So there's this overarching thing to keep things very, very, looking uncontroversial, number one. But this woman made a fascinating point that I hadn't even thought of before. She said, I'm a Jew. My parents survived the Holocaust. We came from a minority, which meant we automatically wanted to assimilate and accommodate.
Right.
The hundreds of thousands of Muslims that have arrived to Sweden from Syria, from Iraq, and elsewhere, they come from countries in which they are the majority. So they can't even think about the requirement to accommodate because they never had to accommodate, right? And so they come into Sweden and they want to have their little majority culture define their life inside a nation where they're the minority. And sooner or later, that's going to cause tension. That's just going to cause tension.
I'm running out of time. I want to talk to you about this much more. I hope you'll come back when you come back to the States and talk to me again. But just to close this out, is there a connection between what's happening there and what Trump is trying to do in terms of immigration here? Is there a way to put the brakes on this in America before we wake up one day and we're having this sort of problem here?
Look, you cannot separate Brexit from Trump, from the rise of this party in Sweden, from what's going on in Hungary, from what's going on in Poland. And wherever you lie politically, it comes down to a very simple question. What does the word Sweden mean? What does the word America mean? If these words are to have any meaning, right, they have to have a content. And if you say it's irrelevant, if you say like Hillary Clinton when she gave that speech to those bankers, the transcript was leaked, we want to have a borderless Western Hemisphere, then suddenly, if there are no borders, America means nothing. The concept of America, the philosophy, 1776, rugged individualism, free markets, it's nugatory. It disappears. And every country in the 21st century has to wrestle with this. What does it mean to be a Swede? And can another culture come in and change my culture and Sweden still remain the same? Yeah. A lot of people are saying you can't do that and remain Sweden.
Yeah, it's a really, really difficult question because you want the sanity, but you don't want the Nazis coming back, obviously.
Well, this is the dangerous thing. Yeah. So the last point, I mean, this Jewish Swedish person said, I asked her, so what's the best case? What's the worst case? And she said, if these former Nazi affiliated party wins the election, then they may have a chance to begin a debate. And she said, if the former Nazi affiliated party doesn't win the election, there will be no debate. And you know what's going to happen then? Sooner or later, the Swedish Swedes who grew up here, whose women are being raped and whose daughters are being told you can't wear a miniskirt in Malmo, they're just going to resort to violence.
Yeah.
And we don't want that.
It's terrifying.
We don't want that.
Yep. Sebastian Gorka, thanks very much for coming on. When you get back to the States, I'd like to hear a further report. Really interesting subject.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thanks,
good to see you.
Thanks, Drew. Bye.